Good evening, children. Today's story is The Frog Prince. Once upon a time, in a land beyond the faraway hills, there lived a little princess. She lived alone with her father, the king. Although she was quite lovely, she was also rather spoilt because the king was a kind hearted fellow who allowed her to do whatever she pleased, and he gave her whatever she wished. She had so many toys that she couldn't possibly play with them all. But there was one toy she loved above all else, a golden ball. One day the little princess was playing with a golden ball beside an old well in the wood. She laughed and chuckled as she tossed it into the air and caught it again. Then she threw it higher and higher, and splash! It fell down the well. "Oh no!" wailed the princess as she peered into the deep dark well. "I'll never get it back now. Oh, how I'd give anything to get my lovely golden ball back!" Then, as if by magic, an ugly frog appeared on the edge of the well. "What's wrong?" he croaked. As you can imagine, the little princess was rather surprised to hear the frog talk. "What did you say?" she asked rather rudely, for she wasn't at all keen on green slimy frogs. "I asked what was wrong," said the frog very politely. "Not that it's any of your business," said the princess, "but I've lost my golden ball down the well, and I'd give anything in the kingdom to get it back." "Anything?" asked the frog with interest. "Anything," replied the princess rather grandly. "After all, I'm the king's daughter. You name it, jewels, money, land, anything you want, I could give it to you. But I don't suppose that a slimy old frog could get me my golden ball." "Oh, but I can," said the frog, "and all I want in return is a promise that you will let me eat from your plate and sleep upon your pillow for 3 nights." "Yes, of course," said the little princess, secretly crossing her fingers, for she saw no reason for keeping a promise to a slimy frog. So the frog jumped into the water and within minutes was back with the golden ball in his mouth. "Hooray!" cried the princess, snatching the ball and racing off before the frog had time for so much as a croak. "Wait for me!" called the frog. "Remember your promise!" But it was no good. The spoiled little princess had already forgotten all about him. That evening, the princess and the king were sitting down to dinner when there was a knock on the door. "Let me in, princess!" croaked a familiar voice. "Who is that?" asked the king. "Have you invited a friend to tea?" And because she was so always truthful to her father, the little princess told him what had happened by the well. "Then you must let him in," insisted the king. "You have made a promise, and promises must always be kept." So the princess opened the door, and in hopped the frog. The little princess looked on in horror as the frog made his way across the room and hopped onto the table. This looks good," he said, and began to eat from the princess's plate. "Yuck! I'm not hungry anymore," said the princess, and she looked away so she didn't have to watch the slimy frog eating her lovely dinner. When bedtime arrived, the princess tried to slip upstairs without her visitor. "Princess, I believe you've forgotten someone," called the king. So the little princess had to come back and take the frog to her bedroom. She placed him on her pillow. "Yeah," said the princess, as she climbed into bed with her head close to the frog. She was certain that she would never be able to sleep, with an ugly, slimy frog in her bed. Believe it or not, though, in no time at all she was having a really lovely dream about a mysterious prince. The following evening, the little princess once again shared her plate of food with the frog. This time she even managed to eat a little herself. And when bedtime came, she carried the frog to her bedroom and wished him good night before falling asleep. On the third night, the frog came once more. This time, the princess even fed the frog from her golden spoon. Before going to sleep, she read the frog a lovely story. The princess was growing rather fond of the frog. When the princess awoke in the morning, she was surprised to find, instead of a frog, a handsome prince gazing down at her. The prince explained how a wicked witch had changed him into a frog and sworn that he would remain a frog forever unless a princess allowed him to eat from her plate and sleep on her pillow. When the king heard the story, he was overjoyed that his daughter had kept her promise and broken the spell. He was even more delighted when the prince asked if he could marry the princess. And the princess? Well, she was delighted that her frog had turned out to be a handsome prince and promised never to be a nasty, spoiled person ever again. And so the princess and the frog prince got married and lived happily ever after. Time to go to bed, children. Good night and sweet dreams.